Hello and welcome back to the Trick Play Podcast. I'm Simon Chaskovsky. Shortly, I'll be joined by Caleb Peterson when we break down all the sports-related news, rumors, and drama that you will want to hear about. Both me and Caleb totally forgot to record an intro when we record this, so this is me while editing, just getting her done. In this week's episode, we talked about the NHL trade deadline, the PWHL changing both its draft and playoff rules, as well as the MLB uniform controversies and some court storming to end it all off. Make sure to check us out on Instagram, Twitter, all the other places I have on this list, YouTube, Fresh Take Network, TikTok, all of those fun places. And stick around as we have a very entertaining episode coming up right now. In just over a week's time, we will be having the NHL trade deadline, and although the names on this list are not anything necessarily too shiny, we'll be talking about it anyway and getting into where they might be going and all of that. And the nice thing is we'll be starting right up at the top with Noah Hanifin, the Calgary boy, who has been rumored to be on the move for almost the entire season because of the fact that he is an unrestricted free agent. Calgary most likely does not want to bring him back, is what everybody's been saying. Caleb, I'm kind of curious on just what you think on this entire thing as a whole, because I don't know if I remember what your opinion was on whether the Flames should move him in the first place.
I mean, he was always more of the guy where I was a little bit more on the fence, where I'm like, if you're able to bring him back, I think it comes down to what Hanifin wants. If Hanifin wants to be back in Calgary, you're not going to trade him. Then I think he's one of the guys where it's okay to re-sign him. He's younger than, because we were looking at Tanev and Lindholm. Those two were a little bit more they're either on down years and probably not going to come back. Hanifin was the one where it's like, if he wants to come back, I'm totally okay with not trading him and keeping him. But definitely, I know it was kind of up in the air in terms of whether he'd come back. That was the one thing that my kind of opinion was resting on. But I'm sure Craig Conroy has to know at this point, because we're getting so close to the trade deadline. And if he knows that he's not coming back, he should be finding a deal pretty quick. Because I mean, that's all you can do with these free agents, and it's just about trying to get as much value for these guys as you possibly can before you lose them for free. So I mean, Hanifin I think would be. Tanev is also obviously. To touch on that, he just got traded yesterday as of recording. That's obviously a huge loss. I think Hanifin may even be bigger in terms of, at least with Tanev, he's aging, and it's not like he's going to be a part of this team's future. Hanifin, there was potentially a chance for that. So I think it may even be a bigger loss in that regard. But yeah, I'm thinking when I look at Hanifin, I know there was debates on whether he'd come back or not. There was worries about him telling Craig Conroy in time. As soon as Craig knows whether he's coming back or not, it should be time for him to pull the trigger. I don't know what kind of return he's going to get, though. Hopefully more than he got for Tanev.
Yeah, and that has been the biggest part of that conversation, is the fact that obviously with Tanev, you only got a second, you only got a third, and a prospect who I do not remember the name of off the top of my head, but I remember he was, I believe, 20 forward, or no, he was a defenseman. He was a defenseman, more physical style, not necessarily the prospect a lot of Flames fans were looking for, because I think that a lot of people wanted us to get Stankoven.
There was no way.
There was no way, but that was a rumor for a bit that I have a funny feeling was started by Flames fans, not Dallas fans. Either way,
I'm not no way that was ever going to happen.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I was never too hopeful on that one, but I think I'm overall pretty happy with their return, because the one comment I kept seeing as well, which is a very good way to look at it, is would you have rather get a second and a third and that prospect, or would you have rather kept Tanev? And I love Tanev. The whole time he's been on the Flames, I've thought that he's been a huge part of why this team was successful when it was successful, because I think that he's such a very underrated defenseman on that side of the puck, where he's one of the best defensive defensemen, and he has been for 10 years. But obviously he is aging. I think imagining that you were going to get a first-round pick for him was kind of out of the question a little bit, but nonetheless, you got what you got, right? Now, we're looking at somebody who you can get a first-round pick for, almost without a doubt. If you can get a second and a third for Tanev, you're getting a first round pick for Hanifin. I think that actually shows exactly how much you could potentially get for Hanifin. I'm more just curious about where you would send him. Because one part of Hanifin's no trade clause is that he has an 8-team no trade list, is what I'm reading. So that most likely means that you can't really trade him to somewhere bad, or it has to be a
Yeah.
contender, which obviously when you're trading to a contender, salary cap starts to become a worry. So the Flames would either have to take somebody back who obviously has a little bit of cap to them, or they would have to retain again, but after retaining 50% of Tanev, you got to wonder how interested the Flames would be in doing that again.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think it may be a cost you have to pay in terms of retaining the salary. Because, I mean, it's not like the Flames need that salary cap space now, anyways, because their deal ends at the end of this year. Like, I don't think that's the biggest concern. I think if they have to retain the salary, they will. In terms of where he's going to go, it would be, I mean, the number one place that comes to mind would be a place where they would definitely have to retain the salary for it to work, and that's probably Toronto. Because I mean, that was the fit for Tanev that people were looking at, because they just need defensemen, and obviously Bradford living there, like he's got history with Hanifin, like he probably would like to bring him back. I believe he was the one who brought him into Calgary in the first place. So that would be a good destination. Um, that's the number one. That's the number one spot that floats in at the top of my head. I don't know if you've got any other potential destinations for him.
Well, that's kind of the odd thing with this move in particular is the fact that I honestly don't. I don't really see his name floating around with any other teams, and the ones that I have seen have been kind of jumbled all over the place when this all started at the beginning of the year. It almost feels like people are just throwing out names and hoping they're right. But yeah, I'm not sure on that one. I think the one crazy thing about this entire thing is, and this came out back when we were trying to trade Markstrom, but the Flames have only retained salary cap, I believe, 2 times since Murray Edwards bought the team. One of them is the Chris Tanev trade, which a lot of people originally thought was the issue with the Markstrom trade to New Jersey, which caused that to fall apart. And now I think, in my head, that's why I'm wondering whether retaining salary cap would be an issue with Noah Hanifin. I guess the one nice thing is the fact that for the rest of this season, I mean, it would only be for 1 year. I
Yeah,
guess it's not.
and
Really
and here's and here's the thing. Like, if retaining cap is the one thing that's keeping you from making a deal, then you're just going to have to pay out more of the salary anyways. If you keep them, they're going to have to pay the full salary instead of whatever it is, like half. Like that's just is so stupid to me. Like I don't think that's going to be the decision maker. They probably don't do it that often, just because if they find other deals where they don't have to, they'll take that. Um, I don't know. I just don't think that should ever be a priority for a team when making a trade. Like I think if you're a bad team like the Flames, I mean, 3 game, 4 game winning streak aside, like the Flames are right now. If you're a rebuilding team, like you take retaining salary is a great strategy to get more from teams. You use it as a bargaining chip to get more prospects, more picks, whatever you can get for that. Because if retaining salary is the one thing that's the difference between making a Hannafin trade go through and making it not go through, then you've got to do it. I know they don't do it very often, but I feel like you have to.
No, and I don't disagree. Just logic wise, I definitely agree with you. But I think we can move on. I don't know if I have a team to throw out for Hanifin. I'm going to try to throw out a couple more as we move down the list, but Hanifin's the odd one to me, where he really is the type of defenseman who can fit in most teams' style. Like, he's not very bad defense. He's very balanced. Like, he can score. He can play defense very solid. He has a very good two-way game that I don't know if there's a specific team off the top of my head that necessarily needs him. I think there's a lot of contenders that would love to have him. I think it's just whether the Flames can make it work. And it'll be interesting to see if that happens. But the next player we got on our list here is Adam Henrique from the Anaheim Ducks. And he's a bit of an interesting one, as I know the Ducks have had a bit of a interesting year as a whole with their big star going to the year Zegras. I believe he had one really crap start to the year, and I honestly don't even remember off the top of my head if he has turned it around. But I know that's been a big storyline in their season, as well as just a fact. I don't think they've been very good this year, if I remember right. But I'd have to
The
pull up the
Ducks?
standings
No.
in front of me. No, I didn't think so. And I think,
No, they're 43 points, not very good.
yeah, I mean Zegras, 20 games played, 7 points. Not a good season from him. And I'm guessing the 20 games is because he got hurt somewhere along the way, and probably still is. But either way, Adam Henrique is one of those veteran forwards who a lot of contending teams would most likely want to get their hands on. Caleb, do you have any teams you want to throw out there off the top of your head?
Um, before I talk about what teams potentially for Henrique, I do just want to say, for Hannafin, there was just saw this report from the Score that was like an hour ago that the Bruins and Lightning are some of the potential
Oh,
teams
I had
for
heard
Hannafin.
Lightning. Lightning was
Yeah,
one
so
I
that
heard. I
that's
hadn't heard Bruins.
yeah, that's potentially interesting. But in terms of, in terms of Henrique, the one big thing for me is that he's an older player. I feel like Adam Henrique has been around the league forever. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like he's one of those players who's been around as long as I can remember, and I honestly kind of forgot that he was still in the league.
Yeah.
And his, if this website we've got up is any indication, like it's a pretty hefty cap hit. Like I didn't know he was making that much money, to where it's like 5.8 million.
Yeah.
Um, I
He
don't know if
does
that's
expire
accurate.
at the end of the year, though.
Yeah, this website also lists him as a goalie though,
Yeah,
so
that's true.
maybe it's not accurate. Maybe we can find another. If Adam Henrique isn't, I'd be pretty surprised if Adam
Henrique
Henrique
is
making that
also
money.
not 33, I believe you said. So we're kind of just using the
Yeah.
list of names, not necessarily anything else. But either way,
Okay, no, cap friendly backs it up. It is 5.8.
it is 5.
So
Okay.
so that's a
I was gonna say that
is
sounds
a
about right for Henrique.
yeah. That's like that's a pretty decent cap hit.
No,
And
yeah,
it's
it's
like
not little.
I don't know if I'm any contending teams. Like you got to look at the ones with cap space. I think the Ducks are. I feel like if the Ducks are making a deal with that, you're gonna have to retain salary. Um, Same kind of situation with Hannafin, where it's like it's not even a conversation. Like even more so for Henrique with a number that big, because Hannafin is a smaller contract than that. Hannafin's hovering at just around 5, so it's almost a million more. Um, I was gonna say in terms of teams that I would throw out there, I was gonna throw out Bruins, but they're kind of screwed in terms of cap space.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's the
oh
tough
my
thing
God,
when you're
the
talking about like any of these trades is the fact that cap space
yeah,
is such a huge issue with almost all of them.
yes. In terms of teams that like it looks like they could actually make a move, yeah, a lot of these contending teams don't have that kind of cap space. Um, One that I might throw out there that does, like Detroit might be one. They're making a pretty big playoff push. They've had like a great string of success, and their big free agent pickup, Patrick Kane, has been playing pretty well.
Yeah.
If you want to add a little bit more of a veteran presence to that locker room and like really try to make a push this year, it may be a little bit too early because I know that they're not necessarily one of those teams where it's like win now. They're kind
Yeah.
of like win in the next like 2 to 3 years, and like this is still a good playoff team. The Bruins were the other team that I would throw out there. Like that just feels like a good fit. And it feels like the Bruins are the team that are another team, are more so a team that would be like win now in terms of where they are. That feels about right. Um, Otherwise, yeah, like this is one where I feel like a deal might not happen just because of age and because of money. Like it feels like if a deal's gonna happen, it's are people gonna like it, I think it would purely be a rental because I don't know what team is gonna want to re-sign him. With how old he is, and I think he's playing okay, but it's not like anything world beating. It's just for a team who needs a veteran presence for the playoff push, then he'll do good in providing that. So that's kind of why I'm looking to Detroit. Detroit and Boston are my two, and even then, I might be a little bit surprised if a deal for him gets done. That one might be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of the points you made. So some of the teams that I'm just reading, like seeing, have been connected with Henrique is actually the Bruins. Funnily enough, with what you said about their cap, but Another one that I'm hearing is the Oilers, which is interesting to me. Is that's another team that could potentially try and pad their top six a little bit more. Apparently, the asking price, I'm trying to find a source on this one. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find it, but the asking price is a second and a third for Henrique. So similar to Tanev.
Which makes sense because they're around the same age, hey?
Yeah, no, I'd say it makes sense. I think I'd value Tanev a bit more than I'd value Henrique, but then again,
I
different
would too,
teams
but it
need
depends
different
on
things.
it depends on needs. Yeah.
Which is very true. Yeah, for sure. And I think the Oilers one is really interesting to me at the very least because that absolutely is a team where they brought in a couple players who have not worked out for them, who they plan to have work out in their top six, and everyone was so surprised about it. One of those was Connor Brown, who I believe has less points on the season.
Which podcast called that?
Yeah, God, which
podcast was on the Connor Brown hating beat before it was cool?
Yeah, I guess. How many points does he have on the year again? I'm trying to remember. He has 5. He has 5 assists.
Can you get
goals.
negative points?
He has.
Oh my God, he's gonna be on the line with McDavid. Oh my God, he's gonna be so good.
What line is he playing on this year?
Just like back when they were in junior. Okay. This is why you never take Oilers media seriously.
Yeah.
Like I feel like we should have learned that lesson by now.
Well, same thing with Flames.
I already don't take Flames media seriously.
Okay. Well, as long as you know.
Even what you were mentioning. Oh, we're gonna get Stankoven for Tanev. Okay.
No, that one I didn't believe either, but I allowed myself to be hopeful. Because there was also a report.
We're gonna get a first round pick for Tanev.
Hey, there was also a report that Stankoven was sat the night before the trade, and everyone was like, "Oh, maybe it'll happen," but no, guess not. It would have been cool. He seems like a cool player to watch, but I'm still excited.
It would have been cool.
Yeah,
I think we would have had to give up Hanifin and Tanev.
Looking at the Oilers' top six, they actually do have a pretty good top six, depending on how good Evander Kane and Connor McDavid's relationship is. After I don't know if you saw all that, Caleb, but
no.
Do we want to talk about that on the podcast? I don't know. It was more of stuff that Evander Kane's wife came out and said specifically about Connor McDavid himself, and I'm sure you probably saw a video a while back, I want to say a year and a half ago, about McDavid getting into a car holding the hand of a woman who absolutely was not his wife. It was more related to some allegations surrounding that, and Evander Kane and Connor McDavid then apparently unfollowed each other on Instagram because everybody knows that instantly means that you hate each other, and yeah, so that whole thing happened. So who knows what could be happening in that locker room right now, but either way.
I have not heard anything about that.
I don't want to get into any more information than that because the nitty-gritty is a little too nitty-gritty for me, but it's definitely worth a good read if you're interested. But yeah, I will say their bottom six isn't terrible either, but it would definitely be a lot better with Adam Henrique in it.
Their problem has always been depth, right? That's always it's been the Oilers' problem since day one, and this provides that. But I do feel like it's the same kind of cycle that we go through for the Oilers every year in terms of what veteran are we going to pick up at the deadline, and that's going to be the one to push us over the hump. It's who the last year. Who's the defenseman from Nashville?
Oh, Ekholm.
Yes, Ekholm.
Yeah.
Ekholm.
But yeah, I do know what you mean. I don't think Henrique is that by any means because I don't actually think he pushes any of their players out of the top six that they currently have right now.
No, he'd be like a third line guy.
Assuming they don't trade someone in their top six to get him. But
that would be kind of stupid.
Yeah,
that would be kind of stupid.
It would be a little bit. I don't disagree, but I think he would.
I think he'd bring him in for depth.
Yeah, for sure. I think he'd fit pretty well in that third line though, with Brian McLeod, Corey Perry. That's not a bad third line. And I mean, honestly, this Oilers team is really good. Overall, you pointed out the fact that their depth has always been their issue. This season, it's not quite as bad. I mean, Connor Brown, only 5 assists on the year. Not great, but, other than that, Dylan Holloway, Sam Gagner, That's a fairly good fourth line overall. Like,
Sam Gagne is still funny to me, but
whatever.
I think it's funny that he's still playing.
You think so? How old is he at this point? I guess he's got to be
I
getting up
feel like, I
there.
feel like he's got to be like 45. I don't know. I feel like he's been
I
around
don't know about
forever.
that. Well, because he was in juniors in 2010, wasn't he?
Oh no, he's 30. He's 34. I don't know
There
why
you
I
go.
feel like he's so
I was,
old.
because yeah, 34 makes sense. Like 14 years ago, 2010. There you go.
He was not he was drafted in 2007. I think that's why I'm like, okay, this guy's got to be out of the league by now.
I guess. But either way, like that's not a bad bottom line at all. Although he does only have 10 points on the season, that's pretty ass as well. But
Yeah.
like, I mean, overall, fourth line not terrible. I think with this Oilers team, it's the same issue it's been like at certain points where it's just like you gotta fucking do it. Like you just gotta. It's the type of thing where you have all the talent in the world. You've finally clogged all the holes in your ship. It's just getting across the finish line, and actually doing it. And that's what it is for this Oilers team. Like I think that's the biggest difference for me. Is almost, I don't know why you'd make that trade. I guess I don't really know why you'd bring in Henry.
I feel like there's bigger fish. I feel like there's bigger fish. You know?
I don't know what, like you could bring in a better goalie. That I believe for Edmonton, but it's the same issue I brought up every single time someone has gone, "Oh, the Oilers should trade for Markstrom." They're already paying two goaltenders like over 3 or 4 million
Yeah.
dollars, which is their issue.
Their cap
They'd have
situation
to
isn't
ship
very
out
good
one of
either.
them, which would not be fun to do, by the way, as that would probably cost a pick or two to get rid of if they don't do it in the
Yeah.
same trade, which would decrease how much you get in return, which obviously I don't think the Oilers are going to like either. But yeah, no, I don't really like their odds of landing Henry. As for Boston, it's just a cap issue at that point. I don't know if I like that match for. I think Henry could fit better with the Oilers, but I could see him over there. The next one on the list is another interesting one.
This is the most interesting one, I think.
Yeah, Jake Gensel, which a lot of conversation has been around the fact that he is hurt. He was probably number one on the list of people to potentially be moved up until that injury. And now that injury has slid him down just a touch. But I still think that any legitimate playoff team would be pretty stupid to not try and bring him in if he's back in time for the playoffs, which all reports are leaning towards yes, he will be back for the playoffs.
Yeah, I feel like even with the injury, I mean, it's like you just said, the playoffs is the reason teams are going to be picking up these guys is because they're already in a decent spot and they need someone for the playoffs. And I mean, the two teams that have been linked to him that I think are the logical spots, one I think more than the other, is Vancouver and Vegas. Those are the
Yeah.
two spots
Well,
that I've always
there you
seen
go.
him be linked to, and I think Vancouver is the number one because I think I Vancouver. This feels like a special year. I mean, because I mean I've talked about earlier in the season how I didn't even really believe this. I still feel like their success is almost like what's happening here. You know what it almost feels like? It feels like that one year where the Flames were really good, and then they
Yeah.
were the first overall seed, and then they got what four
Oh,
to
I
one
remember it
against the
well.
Habs.
I remember it well.
Yeah, it's like that would almost be my worry for Vancouver, where it's like your regular season success is kind of like ephemeral and it kind of goes away. That would be my worry. And I think bringing in a guy like Gensel, who's got that playoff experience but is also still young, because he was there for the Penguins Cup runs of like 16, 17, like that kind of
Yeah.
era. That would be like almost a perfect fit for them. And like it just makes so much sense in my head. I mean, Vegas is the only one that's been listed and linked to him, so I mean, I guess that could happen too. Both teams are kind of screwed for cap space, but I mean, I don't know. The cap is kind of magic. Just put someone on LTIR and it fixes everything, I guess.
Well,
The Leafs are the cap.
wouldn't he be
He's
on
on
an
that.
LTIR? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, at least until like whatever they said, like March 10th was the earliest they could bring him off. I don't know. It just makes so much sense for Vancouver. Like I do feel like you have to go all in on this year, like because I don't know. before this year, I was like, the Canucks almost have the worst future in the NHL. Like that's what I was saying before this year, and I was proven wrong,
And
I
then
guess.
all of their
But
prospects all worked out all at the same time.
yeah, I still don't even really know how they're this successful. But
No,
I
it
mean,
doesn't make a lot of sense.
if you're running hot, you might as well go for it. So I think that's kind of my rationale. It's like if you're gonna make a move, I think Gensel is the most attractive. Like out of any of these players, I get that he's hurt. Whatever, he's gonna be back for the playoffs. At least that's what all indications say. If he's gonna be back for the playoffs, you make this move. Um, so I don't know. I think that again, I think he's the most exciting free agent, or not free agent. I think he's the most exciting like trade bait guy out there. So I think if any of these like Vancouver, Vegas, top of the division type teams are going to make a move, it should be for Gensel. And if I'm Vancouver, I'm already like sending in offers every day. Like that's the move they have to make.
Yeah. And with Vancouver, the one thing that they absolutely do have to be the opposite of Edmonton is they have insane depth. Like all through this lineup
Yeah.
is pretty nuts just with how balanced they are. And a player like Gensel would do wonders to that top six. As I would say, their biggest strength is straight down the middle. So adding an elite winger to really help you out there in that top six would just put you over the top. Like, and you could pretty much mix and match that top six as well with like it doesn't matter who you put together at that point, it would work. And I
Mm-hmm.
think yeah, I really like that matchup. I'm really happy you brought up Vancouver actually because I think I do agree with you. I think they're the team to really watch for in a trade with them. I also think Vegas would be a fairly good team to pick them up for a lot of obvious reasons. They're the Stanley Cup. They're the reigning champions. I'm sure they're going to be trying to make a couple moves here to try and make their team just a touch better. And it is not unknown for Vegas to pull people off the
Yeah.
LTIR right before the playoffs. So
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't be shocked if Vegas tried to make a run out as well. But I would say I'd want Vancouver to get him. I would love for Vancouver to
Yeah.
make a magical run this season, as that would be very
I
entertaining.
would too. I get to be part of the riots this time. I'm
Yeah,
here.
when they lose to like
I'll
Boston again.
I'll I'll, I'll get to flip over a car and set things on fire. It's gonna be so fun. I can't wait.
I can't wait for when
Um,
it actually happens, and you're gonna have to go like you're gonna have to come on the podcast like the week after. Go like, just to be clear, I was not involved.
I was not there. I was not there.
Yeah, but I do think this Vancouver team absolutely does have the potential to be something special. But
Yeah.
it's just gonna come down to again if they can do it, as there are definitely a couple holes in their roster. There's a reason a lot of people didn't think they would be that good going into the season, and even if they
Yes.
have proven a lot of people wrong, a lot of teams that play over their potential tend to fall flat when things really hit the fan. And I'm kind of just
Yeah.
curious to see what happens for Vancouver when that happens. And the best thing that you can do to completely avoid that is to bring in more talent. And that is the one thing they absolutely do have the potential to do there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think we can move on because we're going rather slow. The next one here, Vladimir Tarasenko for the Ottawa Senators, which me and you were both talking about before the podcast. The odd thing here is neither of us had even heard that he was on the market, but it does make sense that he could potentially get moved, considering the fact that I mean Ottawa just hasn't been very good this year. That's been most their big issue with they have
Yeah.
severely underperformed. Tarasenko not necessarily immune to that either, as he hasn't had an incredible season, at least not to his standards. Not a bad one, but not a great one. So not something you would expect for someone who 2 or 3 years ago was a very elite winger. So, in my opinion, the one thing that is going to be interesting is what kind of return you get for Tarasenko more than anything, because I think a lot of a lot of contending teams would probably want him. It's why Ottawa wanted him. They thought that they were going to
Yeah.
be a contender this year, and that's why they brought him in. But I think it all just comes down to what you would be getting for him, because you don't know what you're getting with Tarasenko, I guess. Are you trading for
Yeah.
someone with the potential to go back in the right situation to the player we've seen in the past, or are you trading for the top six player he sort of has become?
And I mean, I don't think you're ever going to go back to like the player he was. Like I do think that because how old is he now? How old is he now? He's getting up there in age. Um,
He
he's
is.
third. This website says 32, but I
Yep,
know.
32 is right.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, he's getting up there. Um, kind of like coming off of his like the end of his prime, like just finished that era, I'd say. So it's like obviously you're not going to get that same level of production, but I do think he's still a valuable player to have. Another player that's been through a Stanley Cup run in
Very true.
2019, so that provides that kind of playoff experience. So it's a similar kind of group of teams. It'd be a similar kind of group of teams that are looking at him that are probably looking at Gensel's same kind of. I haven't seen him linked to Vancouver anywhere. I think Gensel's the big fish there. That's what they're going for. So maybe they don't
I
have
think
as
it
many
just depends on whether you're
eyes on
trading for
Tarasenko.
someone who you're bringing in only for this run, or are you trading for someone who are bringing in permanently to be part of your core? Because I think that's
Yeah,
what Gensel is. Gensel is a permanent. You're not trading for him for 1 year. You are going to sign him to a big deal, and he's going to stick around for a while. Tarasenko,
yeah,
I don't actually know if he's expiring at the end of the year. I'm kind of just assuming here, but
I believe he is.
he is. Yes, Tarasenko is as well. But are you going to sign Tarasenko to a big contract at the end of the year? I mean, you can, but I have a funny feeling you won't. You're probably going to let him walk. So I think that's also going to be a big part of how much money you pay him is the fact that he is a rental. I don't think Gensel's a rental. I think you're trading for someone you expect to keep around.
I would agree with that. And I think, cause again, so when you look for rentals, you're looking for those teams at the very top. And I think my number one is probably Florida would be my number one
Yeah.
spot for him to go to because I think he fits in pretty well in the top six, kind of second line spot there. Because as it stands, they've got what is it? Verhage, Barkov, Reinhardt is pretty set in stone, and they've got Bennett and Kachuk playing with Nick Cousins. I think you could probably bump Cousins down, and then that forms a pretty solid top six. And then I think the Panthers are already doing really well. I believe they're are they first or second in their division at this point? I think they're first. Yeah, tied with Boston. Um, so obviously they've had a lot of success. They probably want to replicate the Cup run they made last year, and adding a veteran guy like Tarasenko definitely helps.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree with a lot of that as well. The one team that I am seeing, I'm not seeing a lot of teams, but the one team I am seeing is the Islanders. Yeah. No, they're currently sitting at about.
They're
Where are
not
their
looking too
standings?
good.
Oh, they aren't.
That
Okay,
would
well
be a
then
weird
I
one.
am very curious to why they're rumored to go grab him then because of the fact that yeah they are in an interesting spot, fifth in the standings
Uh,
in their division. I'm not too sure why they're rumored to go grab him because
that would be such a weird one for me.
you
I
would
I, I
assume
wouldn't
they'd
see
want to
that.
sign him to a longer deal.
Tarasenko was such a win now move, and the Islanders are not in win now move. They are in like same kind of spot as Calgary. It's like make the playoffs is your goal, and that is nowhere near a guarantee. Which is why I'm like I don't see that happening at all. I think it has to be someone who is like realistic expectations of going into the Stanley Cup, and I think that's what Tarasenko would want too. Like I think it's something we forget is like these players are also chasing like a ring at this point as well. And I don't think if Tarasenko's going for a ring, he's not doing the Islanders.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. The Islanders do have talent. Like when I did that was the thing. I didn't know what their situation actually was when I did see that one, but they do have quite a bit of talent. They're not a bad team on paper. It's just clearly not worked out very well for them so far. Like but they do have the talent to potentially try and turn things around, so I guess I could see why they might think they might be able to do something with it if they could put him on a line with Bo Horvat and Barzell. That's a pretty good line, but
It
I
is, but like
guess
I don't know, like your season has been up and down at this
yeah,
point. Like I don't think are they like they're not even on a 2 game winning streak. Okay, like they're five 3-2 in their last 10. It's not like they're on some sort of like heater where like Detroit where it's like you figure you're going to get into the playoffs with how you've been playing as of lately. They're like 6 points out of a wild card spot,
yeah.
and I I just don't see it.
No, I don't think I do either. Like, I just thought I'd throw it out there as well because that is the one team I am seeing. I'm not seeing a lot of other names. I mean, this one, again, kind of for the same reason as Adam Henrique, I think, but I am seeing the Oilers. So I guess that could be another player that they could go for.
Yeah,
But
that one would make a little bit more sense.
yeah, I guess Tarasenko's a little bit less money than Henrique, so I guess that would work a
Also,
bit more
probably
for them.
a better player at this point still.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, it's a completely different kind of player. I think I like Henrique more for the
Yes.
Oilers because they don't really need pure scorers. I think they've got that covered.
No, they do kind of have that covered. It's true.
Like I that's why I kind of like Henrique more for them, just because a two-way forward, you can never have enough two-way forwards on your lineup, at least in my opinion. But
Tarasenko's the flashier move that they would totally make, though. I almost see it as more likely.
that's true. Actually, yeah, no, it is a very Oilers move to make, and like to pick them up for like way too much as well.
Yeah.
I can see that, but whatever. I mean, I think there's one more that I'd like to touch on, maybe two. We can maybe talk about Buchnevich, but the one that we should talk about a little bit, probably not for too long because it doesn't sound like it's actually going to happen, but Jacob Markstrom. In the last, I believe, couple hours as of recording this podcast, they just said the Flames came out and announced that they will not be trading Jacob Markstrom, which is very interesting, all things considered, because, I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It kind of says this complete opposite of what you're kind of saying by trading a player like Elias Lindholm, even if that has worked out fairly positively. As for record in the last little bit, it is kind of an interesting move to hold on to an aging player there who has been who right now their value is higher than ever. If Markstrom falls off a cliff at the end of this year, I don't think you're getting a first round pick for him. So I think the Flames, if you're not moving him, you have to pray that he continues to play well. And
Yeah.
I know that I've heard
I,
the argument I've heard, and I'm just going to throw this out to you, Caleb, because I also want your opinion on this, is that, and it's kind of true, most goalies are usually worth more in the offseason, is the argument that I've kind of heard, and a lot of teams don't really want to go out of their way to grab goalies ahead of a playoff run, because if they're in that top spot, obviously Devils are a bit of an exception, but if they're in that top spot, generally they already have either a goaltender who's elite in their own right, or they might just be playing hot. Either way, you don't really want to trade for somebody to try and replace that most of the time. But I don't know.
yeah, I could see that. And I mean, Markstrom is unique in that he's like the only one of these guys who is not a pending UFA. So it's not like there's.
Yeah.
I feel like he's gonna. I feel like he has to get traded by the end of that contract, and I do think it's almost. I would be okay if he got traded in the offseason. There's not as much urgency to trade him now because it's not like you're going to lose him for nothing. I do still think you're trying to get as much value out of him as you can because, like you made the good point, it's like he's playing the best hockey that he's played in a while now, and we didn't see that last season. And so fear is that he plays bad the rest of this season, or he plays poorly next season, and then you can't get as much for him. But it's the kind of thing where it's like I do kind of get that argument where I'd be okay with letting him. I would be okay with saying hold on to him until the end of the season as long as you make a deal at the end of the season. Because where I would get scared is if they hold on to him past this off season, and then at that point that when they're like
At that point, do you talk about trading?
he's been
like
so up and down.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I know the other argument I've heard. I haven't heard his name in the last little bit, but I remember the last person I think who brought it up to me was Anand on the podcast. But he brought up the idea of trading Vladar, and I wonder if the Flames are going to look into that a little bit in the next week, and maybe we'll see some rumors on that. I kind of doubt
Maybe
it.
you're just not gonna get anything for him.
Oh God, no, no. I do agree with you. I think at that point you're just.
It's just to make room for Wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think if they wanted to do that, they would have. So.
Yeah,
I
they
think
would
it's
have
kinda
done it
bad.
earlier.
Yeah, I think they would have already done it. So. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit of an interesting one. If the Flames did trade him, the only real name at this point that anybody had been hearing was the Devils. That is the big one because they make way too much sense, and that's why it just can't work apparently.
Yeah,
That's the one matchup where like trading him now makes so much sense because of the
I
fact that they just have no goaltending. They have so much talent. Like all they're
I
missing
almost
is
wonder
goal.
if well, that was your Stanley Cup pick. I almost
It
wonder
was,
if
yeah,
the fact that the Devils are like not quite as good as we thought they would be, if that's hurting the trade. Because do you think if the goaltending was still bad and the Devils were in a playoff spot right now, I feel like they would have done it already.
yeah,
Like I feel like that deal would have already been made. I feel like they would have been willing to give up more, and I feel like the fact that they are currently same situation as the Islanders, exact same situation as the Islanders. Um, they're currently 6 points out of a wild card spot. Like it's also, I do think the Devils have a significantly better chance of getting that because I mean they have a lot better talent and a lot younger talent.
yeah,
And I do think goaltending is their one massive hold. But I think if they were in that spot a little bit more, then they'd make that move. But because they're not, they're probably willing to wait and say like, why don't we just get him in the off season? That would kind of be what I'm thinking, and I'm not mad if it goes out that way. As a Flames fan, I'm okay with that. I
yeah.
think you just have to get rid of him by the end of the off season.
At this point, I've accepted the fact that Wolf just isn't getting that much NHL time this year, as stupid and dumb as it is. I
Yeah,
I don't even know what to do anymore with that situation, just because it's kind of been blown out of proportion so much that because of the fact that they've
yeah,
waited so long. Like the funny thing is, I still remember. I think it was a week or two ago. Wolf had like a crap game when he was called up to like replace for. I think it was an injured Vladar, and instantly the whole internet turned on him, and it was just hilarious to watch, saying that he was too short to play in the NHL, which is just the funniest thing in the entire world because the whole thing that everybody's been getting pissy about on Twitter is the fact that the Flames haven't done anything yet. But now people are saying that they shouldn't because Wolf will never be better than an AHL starter. Which, you know what? Whatever. Welcome to Twitter. That's
yeah. I
been.
was gonna say.
I had a fun time reading all those tweets. Either way, it's important to have a memory of a goldfish whenever scrolling on Twitter.
Yes.
I think I'm pretty happy to move on though. I don't know if you do want to talk about Buchnevich, if you want to
I
touch on that one.
I can. I
Okay.
mean, we can run through that quick. I mean,
Sure.
I do think he's one of the more interesting guys because he's the youngest,
Yeah.
other than Hannafin, I guess. He's the youngest player on this list. He's a little bit older than I thought, honestly, but he's still young, still a great player. Also, another guy with playoff experience. He'd be a guy similar to a Gensel in this realm where
Yeah.
he's a Gensel, but not to the same
Not as
extent.
skilled, but yes.
Um,
I do know what you mean.
yes. He's like a what's the he's almost like a no name brand Gensel in terms of what you're getting.
That might be too
Where
mean.
it's like
But yeah, he's still a very, very skilled player. It's just like I
he's
think
still a very
the
very skilled
fact
player,
that
but I'm
Gensel
not saying like
is on the market is
it would,
kind of
to
making
say
it
to say
interesting.
to say the no name brand. It's not
No, I
necessarily
do know what you
saying
mean.
that.
I do know what you mean.
It's you're getting the similar kind of thing with what you want. It's just like not quite to the same level.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah, and maybe that was a little bit of a harsh comparison, but it is still the kind of thing where it's like you're getting a good, still relatively young player who has playoff experience, and he's still going to be able to contribute to your team.
Okay. Caleb, for $1 million, who do you think is interested in this forward to add to their top six?
Oh boy, probably Edmonton, probably all the same, probably Vancouver, probably all the same teams we've been talking about.
I was more just meaning the Oilers because yeah, no, they are one
Yeah,
of the teams rumored
I
to
was gonna
potentially
say
be
like
going.
that's probably yeah.
They apparently have
Where is
scouted
it?
him. I mean, sure.
That one
It's
I would
the same
honestly
thing.
be,
Yeah.
as an Oilers fan, if you don't give up too much for him, that would probably be the one I'd be most excited about. Honestly,
What is it rumored to cost?
that's
A
realistic. At
first.
least.
It might be a first. Holy.
I could see a first.
I could too, but I don't
I
know
could
if
see
the
it.
Oilers would want to give that up.
Maybe not. I mean, the thing with these, like, it is a late. It will be a late
It
first.
will be.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, but like a
I would,
first round
I'd still
prospect
do
is
it if
kind of
I'm
what I'm
Edmonton.
hearing,
Yeah.
which makes sense. A couple other
Because
teams
I
to
mean,
throw
I
out
don't think
there.
we got to Gensel, but Gensel was talking. There was rumors that might be 2 first-round picks. So it's like
That I do sort of believe. Well, I'm sure that was before his injury. Now it's kind of
I know
it'll
that
still be
the
high.
story that I was reading was saying that it would
Is
still be
it?
the same price.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
but
good for the
the
Pens, I
injury
guess,
hasn't
but
dissuaded teams. Yeah,
yeah, that's good for them. But yeah, other teams: Detroit Red Wings, Carolina Hurricanes,
yeah.
Buffalo Sabres. A lot of names that probably wouldn't surprise you too much. But
Sabres won a little bit, but otherwise, yeah, that all makes sense.
yeah, yeah, no, that is the funny thing about this article is with Buffalo, they open it by saying, "Why does he make sense?" And they just say, "Good question." So I think they're even kind of
Well, there we go.
questioning that rumor a little bit. But
Yeah,
either way, Carolina and Detroit, I think I like how he would probably line up for both of those teams, maybe a bit more than Edmonton, just because I think Edmonton, I don't know why they're trying to add to their top six, honestly. I feel like if I'm Edmonton, I do. Like, you kind of made fun of their whole thing of bringing in Corey Perry, bringing in, like, those kind of, like, vet guys just to fill out their bottom six. But I almost feel like that's smarter. I don't know if you necessarily need to go out of your way to trade away a first round pick. If you want to, I'm sure it
I
doesn't
guess.
help. But,
I don't
or
know.
it
I
doesn't,
feel like you've got
it can't
you're
hurt.
not building for the future. You're building for
Sure.
now. You've
That's
got the
true.
2 best players in the world. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I don't know. I just think that if you're the Oilers, I don't know if I'm trading my first for Gensel. I'm not. I don't know if I'm trading my first for Buchnevich.
Trade your first for the next 2 years for
Yeah,
Gensel.
yeah. I don't know. It's a tough situation for them, but I mean, it's a tough situation for all these teams, and just whether that's worth it or not. But we'll see. I really like the idea of him on like Carolina or Detroit. I think both of those teams make a
Yeah.
lot more sense, just like overall, just scheme wise, and just adding to. They're both already stacked and going to make a decent run at the playoffs. So I think that matchup would work really well. So are the Oilers in their own right, but I don't know if necessarily a top six player is what they need as much. Adding, I feel like I'd trade a first for like I don't know. I'd bring in a defenseman. I've been saying that for the Oilers for fucking as long as I can remember, but you know,
Yeah, but I mean, there's not that many good defensemen out
there's
there. Is
not.
the thing. Like it's a more
the
forward
the best
oriented,
the best two were on your rival down south, so
and you're not going to be getting those. The Conrad's not going to be making a deal with the Oilers.
that's true. Actually, that's a very good point. Especially like I wasn't even thinking about that. Actually, I wonder how much that helps. Be it like having a former Flame, seeing
Oh
like
yeah, it's
Holland's
never
phone
going to
number on
happen.
there, just going nah, not happening.
It's never going to happen. No, and I mean, there's very little precedent for it, anyways. Like Lucic, Neal,
Oh, I
but
guess. Like Ladislav
other than
Speed,
that,
if you remember that trade back in like
yeah, yeah.
2015-ish,
There's a reason it never happens. There's a reason it never
Shout out to all
happens.
my homies who remember
Teams don't want to
Laurent
make their rivals
Brossois.
better. Oh yeah, yep.
Because I think he was part of that trade too. I think there was one other trade that I can't remember anymore. That also.
I think that might be it for recent. Because I think they had only made like 3-ish. I feel like they've only made like 3 trades.
It's the number is not a lot, but I am curious, so I'm gonna quickly take a dive into that. The first Flames and Oilers trade was in 2010, with it being actually, you know what? It is still fairly recent because it is only 3 years earlier than the Ladislav Smith trade.
Yeah, it's
Which
only
is funny.
three.
Which is funny to call it that, considering Smead wasn't even that good. But that should speak on how, like, how big that trade even happening was. But it was Steve Stais being traded for Aaron Johnson and a third-round pick. Wow.
Oh boy,
I've never
really?
heard. I knew who Steve Stais was. Never heard of Aaron Johnson. But all right. And then yeah, I do remember this 2013 trade. And then it's the Lucic Neal. Yep, those are the three. So it is 3. Was that the number you said?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So you
Called
knew
it.
on that one. I for some reason thought there was one in like the 2000s. I didn't think 2010s because I thought there was one more, but maybe I was just thinking of the Steos trade. Who knows? But I think that is all the big names that are really worth talking about. We'll see who actually ends up getting traded. Some of these are definitely more realistic than others, but nonetheless, it'll definitely make for an interesting post-trade deadline half of the year. As there are a lot of very talented teams this year, and I think it is really a toss-up on who the favorite is. There's not really a clear team that I think stands ahead of the pack. There's no Boston Bruins this year, so I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see where a lot of these players go.
So over the last couple days, the PWHL announced a couple new interesting, I guess not rules, but kind of like tweaks to how they're going to do both the draft and the playoffs. And they're really interesting and really kind of innovative. It kind of reminds me of how we were talking about the Canadian Elite Basketball League with that ELAM ending.
Oh, yeah.
We had that as a segment earlier. It's a similar kind of thing where it's like it's something that seems kind of there's a couple like rule changes that seem kind of gimmicky, but they make a lot of sense for the sport, and I think it's really interesting to talk about. I don't know. Do you want to start with the? We can talk about the playoffs or the draft first. What are you feeling? We'll get into how this.
I'd say we probably let's do the playoffs. That's coming sooner, and that was the big headline personally. And I did say this to you beforehand. I do think the draft is more interesting, but let's start with the playoffs.
We'll start with the playoffs. So the way that they've changed their playoff format is there's 6 teams as of right now in the PWHL, and hopefully they'll expand at some point. But with how it works now, the top 4 make it, bottom 2 are eliminated. So 4 teams are going to make the playoffs. And the change that's unique to the PWHL is that the first place team will actually get to choose their first round opponent. And I believe it's not. I think it's just between the 3rd and 4th team they'll get to pick.
Yeah.
And then the second place team gets whoever's left. But I find that really interesting.
No, I think that's awesome.
I mean, I think it's cool. I think it may not change strategy all that much, but who knows if there's a team that's like kind of come on hot, but they finish 4th. Maybe you want to avoid them, and maybe you want to play like a team that's 3rd, but that's maybe been sliding a little bit recently. Hockey's a game that's all about momentum, and this may be a way to kind of interact that, and maybe like I'll find it interesting in terms of like the team that gets picked and how that mentality changes. It's like, oh yeah, they wanted to play us, well let's show them. I think that's interesting,
right?
And I think that'll add some competitiveness to it.
Oh, it absolutely will. Because just like I could just imagine what that locker room would be like afterwards. Because that's half the reason I love it, because that's how hockey players are. That's how any athlete is. You don't want to get picked to play this certain team. Like it's even in the NHL when a first seed is playing an 8th seed, and you're hearing all going into the series, oh, we want to play them. You know that going into that game, like that other team's going, oh yeah, I'm sure you want to play us, and that's gonna just make them put in so much more effort. I think that's so fun. So I'm really thrilled to see the rivalries that are built off of this.
Oh yeah, because I mean, like in the NHL, yeah, sure, you'll have the outside commentary in terms of like, oh yeah, this is a good matchup. They're gonna sweep by the 8th seed, but the team would never outright say that. But you're making the team outright say that with this, which is really funny. And yeah, really, really smart, and a really smart way to do it. And I just love the creativity in these like kind of orbital leagues, because we've seen it in all kind of sports. We talked about the Elam ending stuff, also similar kind of like innovative rule stuff that happened in the XFL and the USFL in terms of the football side, and the PWHL is kind of continuing that. And I think it's an awesome way to get more attention to the PWHL, because that's a big thing, and they've been super innovative in terms of getting more attention to them streaming on YouTube. This is another thing where it's like, yeah, like I'd want to check out a playoff series where they choose which opponent they're going to go after. I almost wonder why they shouldn't even restrain it to just the bottom 2. I don't know.
Like imagine how cocky you would have to be to go, oh, I want number 2, right? Like that'd be so cool. Like God.
Honestly, but that might even be a strategy, to where it's maybe. Like you want to pick the best team right away so you can play them when you're fresh.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's
And
definitely
then
going to
when
be
this,
very interesting to watch. I'm super excited. I haven't been able to watch a lot of PWHL because, and me and you were both talking about this. We're both fairly busy people with everything that we have. I haven't watched a Flames game in a month, just because of the thousand things going on in my life all at once. But I actually have been excited to watch more of these games because every single time I have been able to tune in, it has been very entertaining hockey, which I know a lot of, and that is the reason that a lot of people have been drawn to it very early, and it has had a lot of success, is the fact that it is really good. Like, unsurprisingly, it is pretty amazing hockey. The only criticism that a lot of people have is the fact that they don't have nicknames, don't have logos yet, which apparently
yeah,
that's going to be coming pretty quick here. But there's a lot of we're hearing a lot of really good stuff about this league, which is pretty incredible, honestly. The fact
it's
that,
definitely the women's league that's had the most success and the most eyes on it, which is
yes,
really
yeah,
promising. Because I mean, there were other attempts, but it's not like they ever got that much press or got that much attention. I think the streaming on YouTube is such a big thing. I think that's huge in terms of getting their name out there. Sure, maybe it's not as good as like actually. Although I think I do have a TV deal with ESN. Um, I guess not as lucrative as that, but
I'm not sure on that one,
I
but I
I think
guess I
they I
just don't
think they
know.
uh, but either way, it's a great way to get your name out there because even like I think you said you had a similar experience, Simon, where it's like I wasn't thinking about watching this, but
Yeah,
it popped up in
yeah,
my YouTube feed, and I was like, I've heard about it, so I want to check it out. Like again, also haven't had a chance to watch like a full game or anything, but I've watched like a little bit of a period here and there just because it'll pop up, and I think that's really interesting. I do think the no names is a huge thing that I know they wanted to start up right away, so that's why they didn't have time to like get anything designed. I hope that's in the works because I do think that adds a lot more. It's like I don't
I
want to
hope it
cheer for
is.
PWHL New
Yeah.
York or PWHL Toronto. Like I don't care. But if they actually have a team name attached to that, then I can start to become like, oh, I'm a whatever
Yeah,
fan. I'm not a
yeah.
PWHL Toronto fan. Like I don't care at that point.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I do feel though that there are so many people that, like, when it was announced that they were going into the season without team names, there's so many people who, and I mean it's the same people who would not be caught dead watching a female sport, but like it's saying that, like, oh no, this thing's dead in the water because they don't have team names. The Washington football team played like 2 years without a name.
Yeah.
Like, this shit happens. I do think it's an overreaction. I do agree with you. They definitely do need to get it figured out, but I mean, obviously it's not a necessity right off the jump. I
Yeah. I mean,
I
they're
think,
making it work.
yeah, they absolutely are. I'm super excited to see what they end up landing with on all that because I already mentioned to you, Caleb, I have picked a favorite team, but I'm curious if whatever they decide to name them changes how much I want to cheer for them. But I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting though. I have been wanting to sit down and watch more games actually, which whenever a lot of these startup leagues do happen, and I'll give like one game a try, right? And a lot of times I'll sit there and go like, it's just not as good, right? Like if I'm watching like an
Yeah.
NFL, if I try and watch the XFL, I'm like, I'm all right. There are other things I could do.
You have to be a sicko like me to watch
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
XFL.
Like there's like other things I could be doing, with an exception to the CFL, I guess. But like, I a lot of
Even the CFL, I've my CFL watching is very much from June till August, and then as soon as the NFL starts up, I don't really watch anymore until the playoffs or the Grey Cup.
yeah, which is fair, right? But like with this one, it is actually different in the fact that it's really good. Like it's legitimately really really good hockey, and that is the one thing that a lot of these. It's not like they're trying to compete with the NHL. They do not.
No,
There is not a top female league in the world that is already set up. They are trying to fill that spot. That's the difference. So they
yeah,
already. It's not like they're trying to compete with an already set thing that's been around for 100 years, like the XFL is with the NFL and a thousand other
well, the
examples like that.
XFL, I mean, they're not trying to compete with the
I
NFL.
know, but just like you get what I'm saying here, right? Where it's like there's never going to be a world
It
where
is a
you
new
will be able
niche.
to compete with the talent of the NFL. Where while with the PWHL, they have the most talented female women's hockey in the world right now,
Yeah,
and that is something that they there's no one who can compete with that, and that's part of
Yeah,
the reason
they
they're
have.
finding success.
Yeah, they do have that in terms of like they have an actual draw. Because I mean, the XFL's draw and the USFL and all those draw is that they're playing football in the spring. It's not anything about the actual talent because it's NFL practice squad guys and guys that never made it to the league. But yes, exactly, the talent is there. It is still tough because they are still going on at the same time as the NHL, and while they're
Yeah,
not directly competing with the NHL, you all are still kind of competing for hockey fans. Um,
yeah,
that would be that is kind of the thing, and I'm like almost wondering maybe they should be playing like, and maybe it would be easier if they were playing in the summer. But I do think they've done a lot of things to help themselves kind of get over that. One of those things is, if we want to get back to the rules, is the draft rule.
yes, that is a really
That's
good
another really inventive thing. So I think this one, it took a while for it to sink in for me in terms of like how this would actually operate when you were explaining it. Because initially I was like, oh, that doesn't make any sense, but now like it does. So the way it works is that instead of the first overall pick just going right away to the worst team or it being just a straight lottery, what they do is as soon as the team gets eliminated, then it's a race for the first overall pick. So the team that wins the most games after they've been eliminated gets that pick. Now, that makes it almost intentionally uneven because obviously some teams are going to be eliminated first, but that enables those bad teams to still have a little bit of preference in terms of getting that
they have
pick,
more
and
time
it
to get
completely
wins.
de-incent. Yeah, and exactly, more time to get wins, and that's the big thing. And I love that because it balances out the need to like, because originally when it was explained to me, I thought that it was just the team with like the best record who didn't make the playoffs, but that's not how it works at all. It's after you get eliminated, whoever has the most wins. So there's still incentive to play, but there's also still an incentive for the league to make the worst teams better, and they still give them a leg up, but they have to earn it. I love
I
that balance, and I think that's something they should do
Oh,
for like
absolutely.
NHL and
They should
any
do it
other
for
league,
anything,
honestly.
everything.
Yeah,
Every
yeah,
league could use that. I think, like with maybe the one that would have a tougher time with it might be the NFL, but like that's just
yeah,
because they
because they
play
don't
less
have enough
games.
games.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
all the other leagues, absolutely, that'd be awesome. I think that's so damn cool. The fact that they're doing that, and
yeah,
it really does have an incentive, like you said, to keep trying, because there's a lot of examples I can think back. I mean, gosh, with the Flames, every time that we've been eliminated early, they'll just start throwing prospects out there, and you kind of just know not to watch those ones.
yep.
Like, it's that type of thing, right? Where, like, at a certain point, it's not competitive. This is a really smart way to keep it competitive, and I think it's
Mm-hmm.
so fun. The one, it's the one thing that's super interesting to me is when a team eventually does come along that's so bad that they legitimately cannot win more games than like the team that would be second worst, and they just almost get stuck in like a spiral a little bit. Like that is the one issue I could potentially see with that, but I think the chances for that are slim.
I think so too, because if a team is that bad, they will have a much longer time to win games. So
Yeah,
like even
true.
even then, like even like I don't know, it's like even bad teams in hockey and basketball and all these leagues that have like 1,000 games, even bad teams will win a couple games. Like the Pistons have been going on a relatively hot streak for their standard in basketball. Like it happens, um, where they like these teams are going to win games, and I do think it does a really good job of balancing it out and making it interesting. Um, to where those games actually still matter, because that's the other thing. Like as a fan too, like if I and especially like as a Seahawks fan, like there'd be the one year where they were terrible. I was tuning. I didn't ever tune out because I'm insane, but I was like very uninterested in the last few games because it's like I don't know if I want them to win. Even this year, the game against the Cardinals, they weren't eliminated until like midway through that game when we found out that the Packers had won. But even then, I was like, well, I don't even want to win this game anymore. Now at least there in this system there'd be still incentive to cheer for your team. And I think that's what's really impressive about the system is that it keeps that going the whole way through. There's still something to cheer for, even if your team is completely terrible.
Yeah, and I mean it all, and that's exactly what leagues like this are looking for. Now, it really makes me wonder if, depending on how things go this year, which I think it'll go well, unsurprisingly, because it's a good idea. I gotta wonder. It makes you wonder if the NHL might think about trying to do something like that, because I'm really curious to see what that would look like in. I mean, we're gonna get to see what it'll look like in a six team league. What would it look like
And,
in a league with 30 teams that all
yeah,
would be stacking veterans at the trade deadline to try and
that would be
add to
funny.
their, like, can you imagine if right now, like, fucking, I don't even know what's like the worst team, the Sharks. Imagine if the Sharks were trying to trade for, like, I don't know, like
Tanev and Lindholm and
Tarasenko, like
yeah,
like imagine fighting for the first overall pick is so funny but so awesome. So I'm so on board with that.
yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think the one thing in terms of like getting the NHL on board that's tough is that these leagues never make the smart decisions. The onside kick still exists in the NFL, so we know that it's hard for these things, even if there's a clearly better alternative to them. It takes forever
The
for us to be able to win.
NFL, or sorry, the NHL, I feel like isn't as stubborn when it comes to that. Strangely, like because we
I
have seen
think
them make
I think all the
changes.
big leagues are. I think all the
Oh, I'm
big
not saying
leagues
they
are. Like that
aren't,
would
but
be a
I'm
pretty
but like think
that
about
would be a
like the
pretty
three
big
on
change.
three on three OT, adding shootout in the first place, like stuff like that. Like they're not afraid to
Yeah,
make
that's true.
changes. Like the NHL specifically is not afraid to make changes to make the game more entertaining. Which
Yeah, and
making
I
goalie
think they
pads
will
smaller
probably
is another big one that
yeah.
like the NHL has done a really good job, I think, actually evolving to the modern game, and I think this is another example of something that I think, depending on what the NHL does, could just become a staple in like 20 years because I think that's so much more
Yeah,
fun. Like I think the
I hope that I mean I hope the PWHL stays around for a lot of reasons, but like
yes, yeah.
just to see these rule changes, like that would be another big reason. Because like I'd like to see this play out like multiple years to give a huge sample size in terms of how it'll work.
Yep.
Does it take effect this season? I assume it doesn't because they've already been playing. Or does it? That would be my question.
Um, that is a very very good question that I'm not too sure on. It
Yeah,
does
that
look
would
like it
be
will happen this season, to what I am seeing.
okay. Okay.
Yes.
The team with the most draft order points. Yeah, I hope that
I'm just assuming that no team has been eliminated yet. So I think,
yeah, I mean it's pretty I assume it's still pretty early in there, or at least like a midway point. I think is where they're sitting at, so that makes sense.
yeah,
And they're all
that would
pretty.
make.
I mean,
Well, they're
it's a
pretty
new
well
league. They're all
balanced.
pretty
Yeah,
even.
they're pretty even.
Yeah,
With like, I'm pretty sure it's Minnesota and New York are the two best teams, if I remember right. I think maybe
Minnesota and
Toronto.
Toronto. Minnesota,
Is it
New
Toronto?
York sucks actually.
Oh,
New York
really?
is
Oh, maybe
terrible.
I'm way off.
Yeah,
God, fake
New
fan,
York is the
my
worst team.
bad.
Yeah.
I knew Minnesota was one of them. Give me
Okay,
that.
but even like yeah, no, nobody's been eliminated. Even Ottawa and New York are still 2 points back of a playoff spot, and they're tied for last. So
Yep.
that would be the one thing that would not. I guess this would still create intrigue. It's like if no, especially in a 16
Montreal is the
league,
other team
if
that's really bad.
nobody if nobody gets eliminated until like the last game of the season, like how does that work?
Well, and
That would be the
you
one
want to hear
thing.
the funny thing, Caleb, as well, with like even New York, you said is ass. I think they're 6-5. They're 6-5-1. Like Ottawa's
Yeah, no,
4-5-4. Like there's teams that are
well, yeah, because
absolutely really
that's what
good.
I
Yeah.
well that's what I said when I it's like yeah, there's still 2 points out of the
Yeah.
playoffs.
Well, yeah, exactly. Right.
Um,
Like it's very very even.
yeah, yeah. So it's like that might be interesting. Maybe I was gonna say that that still might create some intrigue if it's like if nobody gets eliminated until like the last game, but then it's like a almost like a winner take all kind of thing
Yeah.
in terms of like one game to decide who gets the first overall pick. That would make things still interesting. Overall, it's just a great rule change. The more I think about it, the more I like it.
Yeah. And I think as my last call out to anybody who has not tuned into into those games or at least given it a shot, I will say that you cannot attack it without trying at first. Because I have
Yeah.
been calling games for the women's team for the Trojans this last season, and I will say it is a completely different style of hockey. If you like, it is completely different strategies for the most part. It is very, very different as a whole. Like it's just, and it makes it very entertaining. And as somebody who is a goalie lover through and through, I love watching goalies. I love this. I think stylistically, some goalies are just super fun to watch, and a lot of those goalies, the best ones or the most entertaining to watch, are in women's hockey because they have to play so well a lot of the times. And even if you just like here, an example for what I mean by this, I'm gonna scroll through the save percentage in the PWHL, the rankings. The top one in the league right now is a 961. Then it goes 949, 940, 930, 923. They have insane goaltending in these leagues. And that's women's hockey as a whole. And I think if you are a goalie lover like me, you will love watching the PWHL because there are so many talented goalies in that league. I think that's why I enjoyed the game so much that I watched because it was a goalie duel. Like there was a lot of offense, like there was a ton of shots on goal, but those goalies were just standing on their heads.
None of these goalies have a save percentage under 900.
Yeah.
From what I'm seeing.
Yeah. There's so much talent in between the crease for all these leagues. So I think, yeah, it has been on my to-do list for the last little while. We're hitting like the playoffs in most things that I call for. So I've been busy off my fucking ass, but I have been wanting to tune in to another game for a while now. So I'm committing to doing that again because I am seeing on the schedule next time Minnesota plays is on March 3rd, which is Sunday, which I do have off. So I think I'm going to watch that game.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I am not working that day, so I think I should be able to watch that. So I am excited though for what happens with this league because I think it has so much potential. And the one thing that a lot of people talk about in any women's sport, and I think the fact that this is already such a huge conversation as well, kind of shows that it's another thing that could potentially be changed in the future is the pay, which with the WNBA it's been a conversation for years about how the comparison between NBA and WNBA is atrocious. Like I think LeBron makes double what the entire WNBA's like funding is or something stupid. Like it's a crazy number.
Yeah.
But like with the PWHL, it's the same thing. Like they make about the same that the WNBA makes. But the fact that they're already talking about potentially changing that as the league becomes more successful, I think really does show the fact that that is something that they already know will be an issue in the future and they're willing to work on it, which is super important, I think, with the expansion into the women's side of this type of thing, because I know that is a huge reason why a lot of players in women's hockey quit after college because there's just not money in it, right? And
Yeah.
I think the fact that they're finally this is showing that they do care about that and they are going to start working on that. I think that's huge, even if it's not going to happen now. The fact that that conversation is getting started is awesome.
So we'll dive into a sport that we don't really talk about. I don't think we've ever talked about, and that's NCAA basketball. And the reason we're talking about NCAA basketball today, we're not quite in March Madness, so not that yet. But we had a Duke versus Wake Forest game, and the big controversy in that game was it was Wake Forest upset Duke. The fans are super hyped, super excited, obviously, and they storm the court after the win. And in that storm of the court, one of Duke's players, Kyle, I don't know if I remember his last name, Filipowski, he got hurt. I believe it was a knee injury, and that's kind of sparked a lot of conversation in terms of is there a place for court storming in basketball? Should it be banned? I know Duke's coach was very vocal about saying like, when are we going to ban this? And I don't know if I had the exact quote of what he said here. When are we going to ban court storming? When are we going to ban that? How many times does a player have to get into something where they get punched or they get pushed or they get taunted right in their face? It's a dangerous thing. So there's been a lot of debate in terms of what's going to happen. I think it's obviously something that's hard to control, but just in terms of putting all of the like how you would actually going about doing this to the side, do you think it's something they should do in terms of banning court storming entirely?
I've always thought as a fan it's really cool because I mean even growing up I think the idea of being able to go onto the court or go on the ice, that's something that is really really cool for me. Like I still remember as a kid being able to play in the Saddle Dome, that being such like a surreal like thing, and that's something I've always loved about basketball, and the fact that they do sort of have that. But it's when players start to get injured that you got to start thinking about it. And I mean, Caleb, you pointed out this as well, that this isn't the first time this has happened, as a similar thing nearly happened for Caitlin Clark. I don't think she missed any time from it, but it was a very like we're starting to see this happen every once in a while where like a player gets knocked over or a player runs into a fan or something happens, and it's when stuff like this happens that kind of ruins the fun of it, because you do
Yeah.
actually have to start talking about whether or not you need to ban it. So personally, I don't know if 2 injuries is enough for me. I mean, has any other ones over the history? Like, can you think off the top of your head? I'm putting you on the spot, but that's because I don't know. I guess I don't think you follow college basketball any more than I do. So maybe I shouldn't put you on the spot. But like, I can't
No, I
personally
mean,
remember that many times that this is something like this has ever happened.
this feels like a very recent conversation. Like it's not something that's been like very controversial for a long time. I feel like this is a very recent conversation. I'll see if I can find some um, more historical examples of injury, but I don't know. I mean, in terms of what I think about it, I do think obviously when player safety starts to be in question, that's something you have to look at. But I think first of all, I think it's too difficult to ban anyways. Like I don't think it's ever going to happen. Like how do you ban
Security.
a group of thousands of
Yeah.
you're gonna need a hell of a lot of security. You need security around the entire, like a human wall of security around the entire court
It's gonna
if
be
you're gonna
like
want to get that to happen.
presidential like escort level security for
Yeah,
that.
and
Yeah.
is that necessary? And like people are throwing out like I obviously like you we're kind of jumping on how stupid Twitter is. To add on to that, there's like some people talking on Twitter about how you would actually go about doing this, and if someone completely seriously was like, you lock all the doors to the stadium and you detain everybody in there, and I'm like, whoa, that is insane. I'm like, you are off your rocker. But it's like that's kind of the only way you could
I
like
mean,
actually get people in
yeah.
trouble for that.
I mean,
And it's like that's
yeah.
not that that's infringing on like people's rights at that point. Like,
Like,
and
I guess
it's not a
because
crime.
you're well, if it's against the rules, then it. I mean, I guess it isn't a crime. That's true, but
It's not a crime.
it's
Like,
not a crime. It's
like,
just
what are
like
you're gonna get to? Well, that was the other thing where there's like they have them like detained and arrested, and it's like, okay, like what are you gonna do? Like
yeah,
that feels
detained and arrested for
extremely
like.
excessive.
I mean, just it's the type of thing where once you see the crowd going out there, even if you weren't thinking of doing it, are you saying you wouldn't join the crowd? Right? Like
Yeah, and I mean, I guess
for the
there is
chance on the
danger
floor.
for the yeah, and I mean, there's probably a point where it's like you don't even have a choice because you're just kind of getting crowd pushed out into there.
Yeah, you know
Because I mean,
what?
it's a
That's a good
similar kind of
point.
thing with like concerts where it's like, I mean, I've been to a couple of concerts where I got kind of caught up in a crowd push, and it's like I didn't necessarily want to go any closer to the stage, but here I am because I got shoved around enough, and now I'm like 20 feet closer than I thought I would be. Um, so I mean that is dangerous, and I mean we've seen that in music where there's been like death because of crowd surges. So I mean that stuff, that side of it is really, it's really tricky. But I do think I don't know. It's the kind of situation where I think it's a really interesting debate because I don't think there's one clear answer. Because you can't, I don't think you can in practice ban it because I think it's going to happen anytime there's a big win. Um, and even if you want to ban it, I mean, I do think there's something that's so cool. I mean, you talked about like as a fan being there,
Oh
but
yeah.
also just the visual of it is insane too. Like, I mean, I think that's part of what's so cool. Like, I think it adds a lot to how big the moment is to see everybody rush the court after the game. That's how you know it's a huge deal. I mean, they do that in football too, like storming the field after a game. Like that's kind of how you know, like it's a big upset, it's a big win. It's a very cool visual, and I do think you lose some of the culture by getting rid of that. Now, in terms of whether that's worth it, like if someone gets hurt or worse, like then that doesn't matter as much. That doesn't matter anymore. But I don't know. I think it's a really interesting one where I don't know if I really have a side to it. Like I think I love it as a visual and I love it as a part of fan culture. But yeah, I don't know. You like you were saying, the two injuries we have now are not enough for me to be like, yeah, no, let's ban it. Like I don't think either Caitlin Clark or Kyle Filipowski. I don't think they either of them missed any time. They didn't have serious injuries, but I mean,
I'm not
do you
sure.
go preventative? Who knows? Who knows? I don't think he did. I
It
don't think he
did.
did.
It did look like the. I don't remember his name off the top of my head anymore. Filipakowski, I think you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think his was a lot worse than the Caitlin Clark one, and I did mention that to you beforehand. I remember
Yeah.
watching that one when it happened and went like, that was kind of Caitlin Clark's fault. I mean, it has been a minute since I've watched it, but I do remember thinking like, Caitlin Clark was like running across the floor and probably should have been paying attention. Like that's the difference with that one. With this one, it actually was the fans that all rushing the court that kind of caused all of that. Where that's a bit different of a situation, at least in my head, but it's just so hard for that type of thing to be careful to make sure that no one gets hurt that I don't even know how to do it. Like again, to add to your point, like how do you police that? Like how do you prevent it? Like that's so tough to do that
You literally can't. You literally can't. I don't know. I don't know. It's the kind of thing. It's really tough to make that final decision. I think it's just impossible because I mean the thing that they're doing now is finding the schools, but it's not like the people who are storming the court care.
Yeah,
I
that's
guess
a
you
very
just have
good
to
point.
prep. I guess you just have to prep your security or maybe prep the players because that's the other thing. It's like normally if it's a game where a team's getting upset, you probably know, unless it's like a buzzer beater, you probably know that there's going to be some sort of court storming. So you almost probably have to, like in the dying seconds of a basketball game where someone's up by 10, you can probably already just like get to the sidelines quick and get out of there. Maybe that's what you do.
Yeah.
In terms of just like better preparing players for it,
It's
or
so
better
rough.
preparing.
Just on the fact that it literally is. I mean, yeah, no shit, Simon. This is how stadiums are built, but like it's everyone coming in. Not like there's no like area that doesn't have a crowd. You're gonna get like sandwiched a little bit there, which is why it's rough.
But... Yeah, there's pretty much no safety. I almost wonder because I mean fan safety is a part of it too, but I almost wonder like if you have security just around the athletes, maybe that's another way to prevent injury there. But I don't know. It's one of those things like crowd control is almost impossible in a situation like that.
It's also the fact that there would be a drunk college kid dumb enough to try and take a run at the security to go say hi to his favorite player. Like there'd be even worse things to come from that. It feels like trying to prevent it would just make it worse, almost.
Yeah, and when you're in a crowd, it's like you do just kind of go with the flow. It's not like you're not thinking rationally at that point. Like, are you really going to impose fines on individual people? Because it's very much a thing where it's like you kind of see everybody around you doing it, so you go for it. That's kind of the thing. If you're in row 5, you're going to go because rows 1 through 4 have already gone.
Yeah, I guess, huh? Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing. I am curious to see what they do to try and get rid of it. That's for sure. I do not have a solution.
Yeah.
That is.
And it'll be interesting to see if it pops up in March Madness.
Oh,
because
God,
it's March Madness. There's gonna be an upset at some point, obviously. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see, and hopefully nobody gets hurt. I mean, that's always the big thing. It's like you want fan safety, you want player safety. Hopefully nobody gets hurt. But I do think banning it is probably a step too far. I just don't think it's practical, and I don't think I don't know how much it solves because I don't think people would go along with it, and I don't know. That's kind of my thoughts on it. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Nope, I think you hit it pretty well there. I, yeah, I don't even know what they're trying to do by saying they want to ban it. It just feels like the NCAA being dumb. So I think,
Or them just trying to do damage control.
I guess, yeah, no, I guess it's just, yeah. How do you even do anything? I do think the idea of giving like some sort of protection to the players is probably the smartest thing you could do. But past that, like, what else?
That's that. Like, what else could you do? Yeah.
Like, throw out like you'd have to have literally every single front row seat given to a security person, and even then it wouldn't be enough.
Yeah. They're still going to be outnumbered 100-1.
Yeah, well, there you go. Right? Not. There's no way. And then
Yeah.
imagine the spectacle on TV as well. That would make the NCAA look bad if they had 100
There are
security
like
guards
fights
just
between.
beating the crap out of people in the front row who are trying to storm the
Yeah.
court. Like, it would not be a pretty look either for them, even if it is the rule.
Yeah.
So, in honor of the fact that we never talk about the MLB, it felt right to talk about the most interesting thing to happen in the offseason, not with Otani at the front of it, is the fact that the MLB apparently has see-through pants despite being worth billions and billions of dollars. They apparently are having uniform issues, which is absolutely hilarious and the most NFL or MLB thing ever. So, for anybody who hasn't heard about all of this, basically, the MLB sort of decided to change things up going into the season with how they design their uniforms as a whole, with smaller numbers, fabric that I guess is lighter. They changed, like, I think, like, the tone of the white to like eggshell, which is not something I know what that means at all, but you know, like, and it's apparently led to a lot of complaints from players and fans alike about how the uniforms look amateur-ish, as well as apparently having see-through pants that have led to some very funny photos that I will let you Google at your own whim. But I think, Caleb, I'm curious. I don't even know where to start off here, but it's an interest. What do you think about a billion-dollar company not being able to give their uniforms? Like,
Well,
or give their
it's like I think from everything that I've heard about it, is that the big change is that the jerseys are now being manufactured by Fanatics, I
Yeah,
believe, is the
yeah,
big
that's what it
change.
was.
And I mean, Fanatics has a pretty terrible reputation in terms of being just the most cheaply made garbage pieces of garbage jersey. Like they look like knockoffs. And the reason that these leagues go with Fanatics is because they're cheap. And it's such a cheap thing, and it's such a cop out. And I just think it's completely embarrassing. And I think that the pants is the funny
Here,
one, because
you
I
know
mean
what? I
again,
found a really good photo that doesn't really show anything. That's a lot better than the ones I was seeing before. There you go. That gives you a pretty good idea of what you're working with.
yeah. So you can pretty much see through. I mean, obviously there's still a layer of fabric in the way, but it's like I don't know.
No, there's
It
some
was
that are
supposed to
a
be.
lot worse than what I think. That's the shirt. I think that's the shirt that's blocking it. It's
Yeah,
the shirt being tucked in. Like, that
which is
gives you
that's
an
not a good
idea.
look.
No, it's a really bad look because this is not something that any other leagues really deal with. Like, I can't even think of an example. Like, sure, NHL occasionally
Well,
gets complaints just because sometimes their jerseys suck, but like, past
their
that,
jerseys are also being made by Fanatics now, aren't
yeah,
they?
I think
Or they're
so.
shifting to Fanatics.
Something like
I
that.
don't think. I don't know if they have actually gone through with that yet, but I know it was happening or going to happen. Um, so yeah, starting in 2024, beginning next season. So the NHL might like be having some similar issues. It's just like they look so much worse. Not even the pants,
They just
because
look they
if
just
you look,
look cheap.
they do look cheap. I don't know. I mean, even the switch from I don't remember who had it before. Because that was Nike the NHL before. No, Adidas. Adidas was.
It was
I think it was
Adidas.
Nike
Yeah.
and then Adidas. I
No,
think it was Nike and then Adidas.
it was before.
Even
It
the
wasn't Nike. It was Reebok.
oh yes, there was Reebok,
Yeah.
and the Reebok jerseys felt a lot
The Reebok jerseys were
nicer.
nice. Yeah. I
Yeah,
still
I
own
have a
Reebok
Reebok jersey,
jerseys.
and it was a
Yeah.
lot. It was a lot nicer, and it felt a lot more like premium for the price that I was paying.
Oh, absolutely.
Even than the Adidas jerseys, and the Adidas jerseys aren't even bad. Like they're still
Nope.
pretty high quality. But even like just when looking at Fanatics, it's like is this really what we've come to for a major pro sport? Like 2 out of the 4 major pro sports leagues getting manufactured by Fanatics. It's just a total cheap out. It's a total cop out. Um, it doesn't make like I feel like the jerseys are the one thing because it's not only for the players, it's also for the fans. It doesn't make any sense to me. I hope that the MLB gets this fixed because players have been complaining left and right. Like every single team in the league has been complaining about how cheap these jerseys look and the issues with the pants.
And the numbers.
Hopefully they get
Like
it
teams
sorted
do
out. And the
like
numbers, yeah.
yeah, the fact that the numbers are smaller is pissing off a lot of people. Like there's a
It
lot of
doesn't look, it
things.
looks terrible.
Yeah, no, it's just
Yeah.
it's an odd change to something that was already kind of working, and I know it's not like these big leagues are necessarily unknown to cheaping out for really no reasons, but it's just like for this one it really doesn't make a lot of sense. Like in this photo right here, it doesn't actually look that bad, but I've seen some photos that have been that I was actually trying to find that are just brutal. Like it
Yeah.
is really terrible the fact that like it's $1 billion company.
It's yeah, and in that photo you show it doesn't look bad because it's not compared to what they used to be. I think
Yeah.
that's when the and I just hope this doesn't become the new normal. I hope that there's still going to be some sort of standard in terms of what jerseys are looking like. Yeah, I don't know. It's very disheartening to
Yeah.
see this development. I don't know if I have that much more to say on it other than it's just like, come on, this is something that matters,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
to cheap out on this, I don't know. I
Like
don't know.
it's just odd the fact that they I don't understand why like these leagues cheap out on jerseys when that's such a huge part of
They're
the
a
sport.
multi-billion-dollar like.
Yeah, like you make so much money off of them. I get it if you're just trying to make it like, oh, here's one. This one's a really good example of it actually. One second. Let me get this on the screen before we finish up here. But like this that one, that or it's not enough. I wish we saw more of the number here, but like look at the size of that name. Like
Yeah,
that's so weird. It's so whack. Like there's so much open space on that jersey.
it just doesn't look right.
Yeah, it just looks. Yeah, no, it just looks bad. Like there's no other really thing to add here, which is why I didn't even know where to start with this one because it's just like, yeah, shocker. We both think it looks ass. Next segment.
Yeah,
Like that's kind of just how this one is because there's not. Just like why would you do that? It's
yeah.
weird because even like looking at the NHL, like the jerseys they have on the field, like sure the stuff that they that fans have bought has been bad, and that's been the complaint. But the stuff that we see on the ice looks good for the most part. It looks good
For this year,
for
once it
this.
gets to next year, when
Oh,
Fanatics takes over.
oh, is that what it is? Oh, never mind. I'm dumb.
Yeah.
My bad. Well, looking forward to that.
Ugh. That's a 10-year deal in the NHL too.
10 years.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's brutal. How long is the MLB's?
That's a good question.
Yeah, no, I.
Also 10 years.
Oh my god.
Also 10
Oh
years.
my god, what are these leagues doing? This is like, oh, Caleb, you're not gonna get this at all. Actually, no, this is nowhere as bad as the UFC Reebok deal, but it's almost like that levels to me, where it's just like you're just making the sport as a whole look like shit for a bit more
Yeah,
money.
it looks amateur.
It does. Yeah, it
Like,
just looks bad. I don't know.
uh,
It's just bad. Whatever. Next outro.
all right. Thank you everybody for watching this week. If you enjoyed what you saw, make sure to check us out. We are everywhere: YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. If you like listening to us but not seeing our faces, which is fair, we're on Fresh Take Network. That's in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast.
That way.
Just look up Fresh Take
Oh, that didn't
Network.
work. Yeah, down there.
The
It's not in
wrong,
the
yeah,
middle
there we go.
anymore.
No, I know it's a little bit harder for you. It's right here for me.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, look up Fresh Take Network. We're a part of that feed. You just scroll through their feed, find Trick Play, and then you can listen to some of their other stuff too. But yeah, that's pretty much it for shoutouts. Or no, that's not it for shoutouts. I'm starting the shoutouts
No,
now.
we're starting with shoutouts.
I need more fucking sleep.
I know. Ain't that how it is?
Anyway, my shout out for this week. I didn't have like the best shout out for this week, but I still feel like this guy, he seems to be having a hard time, and I feel like I just got to give him a little pat on the back for the Trick Play shout out. I know it'll make him feel better. I know he listens. And that's Damian Lillard. This poor guy. He talks about. He goes on the record saying that he feels really lonely in Milwaukee, and he doesn't have much of a life, and he basically just like feels really sad because he'll go home and watch YouTube. And yeah, he said, bro, I go to practice, go home, watch boxing, play video games. Man, I type in fight tape on YouTube 100 times and am praying for something new to be on there. And then this like I feel like it just got like so blown out of proportion where everybody's like clowning on him. I feel bad for him. Like I don't know. Like I think it's impressive that he's being honest and open about that. I think that's super cool. Like props to Dame for being able to like talk about that. I think that's super cool. And shame on the people who are like making fun of him for being lonely.
No, I think
I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of like a weird kind of, I don't know. I will say
it was a weird headline. It's a weird headline.
I was gonna say it's a weird headline. While trying to find the image that we just put up on the screen, I read one that was like somebody clowning on Lillard for even coming out and saying this by like saying the comment of like, you're making $400,000 a day for 48 minutes of work, which kind of made me laugh a little, but like I do agree with you. It's you don't want to make fun of anybody for mental health stuff. Like that's very important no matter how much money you make a minute, I guess. But
yeah.
Like yeah, it was definitely a weird article to read.
It's a weird headline and a weird story, and it just kind of feels like weird that it got the amount of publicity that it did, and that kind of feels gross. So I don't know. I just want to like pat him on the back and say like, props to you, buddy.
Yeah.
Like good job for coming out. And he even posted it on his Instagram story to say like, why the hell is this like gotten this much attention as it is? He's like, it's not that like, it's not that deep.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's like, it got blown out of proportion. I feel bad for the guy. I'll give him a little Trick Play shout out. Yeah, I know he needs it.
Yeah. As for my shout out, I don't even. My whole weekend was a complete confusing mess because it was very long. It was about 30 hours worth of work over 3 days, which was very fun. But I did the ACAC curling championship. I did play-by-play for the entire thing, and it was a great time. But at the end of the entire thing, it was on the last day before the gold medal I was calling the men's game, not the women's. We had a different team on the women's game. But one of the teams playing in the women's, which was the Concordia Thunder, which if you are not from Calgary, that means nothing to you. But their women's team came over to where me and the color commentator that I was working with, Reese Tenhove, were both sitting and eating lunch, came over and gave us their broom heads for their curling brooms. So now I have this.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, which was a very, very cool thing. I've never been given anything like this. I have a few things from like a couple of the games I've called, but that's definitely one of the cooler ones because I don't know how many times I'll get the chance to call curling. It's definitely one of those unique opportunities where you don't know how many times that's going to happen. And now I've got that. So obviously I don't think this will ever reach any of them. But like, if for whatever reason anybody on that team sees it, thank you. That was really, really cool. I know it meant a lot to a lot of the curlers to get that sort of attention because I know at least in the ACAC they do not get broadcasted very much. So it was a very, very cool experience, and I was very happy to be able to do it. So yeah, that's my shout out. Thank you, Concordia's female curling team, as that was a very, very nice thing to do.
Nice.
Nice.
That's a good story.
That is a good
Nice.
story. Nice.
How was
Okay.
how was calling curling? What do you call for curling? Like how do
That
you
question, I have been asked that question so much in the last week, you have no idea. But it
like how do
was
you commentate curling?
it was very different. Both me and Reese have worked a lot together, mainly on hockey. And generally, obviously, there's a play-by-play and there's a color. That's how it is, right? With
Yeah.
curling, it was a lot more 50-50, which was nice. It was a lot of talking about nothing. And it was a lot of like trying to fill the air, but that was also fun as well. I will say I did have a good time. Overall, it was very, very interesting. It was very new to me. But by the end of the weekend, I think I had it figured out, and it was I had a lot of fun doing it. It's definitely harder than a lot of other sports, which I don't know if that would surprise you too much, but
No,
I
that does surprise me. I mean, there's not a lot going on.
well, and
It's more of a strategic game than anything else. It's not like there's fast paced
yes,
action
that's
going
true.
from end to end.
That is true. There was a lot of strategy to it. When I am not exactly the brightest curling mind as someone who has not done or watched a lot of curling in my life, but it was I personally, whenever I've been given the opportunity to call sports that I don't know a lot about, I've always enjoyed it because it's very, very cool to be able to have a reason to learn about it. Like, never in
Yes.
my life would I think that I would need to understand all of these different rules with curling, and now I do, and that's very, very neat to me at the very least. Like, it's one of those things where, like, I don't necessarily know if I would go out of my way to watch curling in the rest of my life, but now I know what it would be like if I wanted to, and I would understand it if it was on a TV, which is very, very cool and
Yeah.
just neat. And that's something that I just have now. So it was one of
Yeah.
those experiences, and I'm very thankful to be able to work for a lot of the companies I get to work with, to be given a lot of these opportunities. But yeah, no, this was one that I don't think I'll forget for a while because it was very, very, very cool. And although, yeah, I don't know how much more I have to add on that. But yeah,
Watch
playoff
for
times around now here are always fun, jumping from one sport to another. So,
oh yeah. Watch for Trick Play's curling centric podcast next
oh,
week.
it's gonna be
Five
terrific.
segments all about curling.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be great. Or instead,
Tune
all
in next
about.
week.
You know what? Actually, third shout out here. This is not relevant to anybody outside of the Calgary-ish area, but if you have the opportunity and are in the area, the Airdrie Curling Club has like the best cafe in existence, food wise.
Really?
It is
Okay.
so good. It is.
I don't know if I want to go to. I don't know if I want to go all the way up to Airdrie, even if I
I
am back
know,
in Calgary.
Caleb. I'm gonna be thinking about it for a long time now, and at some
Really?
point
Like
I
what
will.
you get?
If
What you
I
get?
so
What?
the first day I got a. Oh, I'm trying to remember the order. I do remember what I got though. I got a poutine and I got a breakfast sandwich, and that breakfast sandwich was the best breakfast sandwich I have ever
Uh-uh.
had.
I'm not a breakfast sandwich guy. I
Really?
don't know if I
Okay.
like.
I got a
That doesn't
chicken burger,
intrigue me.
which was heaven,
Okay,
and then I
the chicken
got
burger that would.
yeah. I one of my coworkers got the taco poutine, which apparently was
Mm,
incredible, and like it was. I will say that is the next that is my third shout out. Go check them out. I think they have a food
all
truck.
right, all right.
I actually do think they have a food truck.
First ever, first ever Airdrie shout
Oh
out on a
yeah,
podcast ever.
yeah. First ever might be last ever. Shout out
Probably
Airdrie.
last ever.
Shout out
I'll
Airdrie Curling
shout out
Club.
Airdrie. It's a pretty cool place.
I don't actually remember the name of the cafe off the top of my head, but go check it out.
God damn it, Simon.
All right, thanks for watching. Subscribe everywhere so that I can buy more San Pellegrinos, and I don't know if we have anything else. Is there anything else happening? Not really. Yep, go subscribe, follow us everywhere. We have stuff on TikTok, Instagram, all that, Twitter, all that. Go yell at someone. I don't know. See you next week, probably.